It has been a very challenging week for Carrie and I, and it's only Wednesday. Most of our problems have centered around electricity, notably ZESA, the Zimbabwe Electrical and Supply Authority, and ZETDC, the Zimbabwe Electrical Transmission and Distribution Company. Boy, has it been a ride, and hopefully you guys will enjoy the story and allow me to talk a little bit about how electricity supply works out here in Zimbabwe. If you're new to the channel, ahoy there and salibonani! I'm Captain Benzie, also known as the Bulawayo Buccaneer, and on this channel I like to talk about my experiences as a British man living in Zimbabwe for the past 6 years now. If you're not new to the channel, welcome back, and I hope you enjoy this video as much as you have the last ones. This channel and my content are not sponsored, so if you want to help support me, the easiest way is to head down below, hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. Leave a comment saying hello, I do try to respond to every single comment that you guys leave for me. Finally, if you do want to go the extra mile to support this channel, I do have both a Patreon page, where you can pledge to support, a Redbubble merchandise store where you can pick up some exclusive Bulawayo Buccaneer swag, and a PayPal tip jar if you just want to donate a cup of coffee or something. The final thing is just to apologise briefly as well. I rushed out to record this video today because we've had torrential rain and I tried to grab some sunlight when we can. I forgot to bring my tripod, so I'm making do with a rock and having to hold my microphone loosely, so I do apologise for any issues with that. Otherwise, folks, let's jump right in. Where to start with this one? Well, I suppose in the words of C.S. Lewis, let's start at the beginning, go on till the end, and then stop. So, Monday lunchtime, our dogs start going crazy. There's someone at the gate, Carrie goes down to check out who it is, and it's the ZETDC, the Zimbabwe Electrical Transmission and Distribution Company, there to sort out a fault with the neighbour's garden. So, we let them in, they climb the pole and do what they need to do. At which point the gentleman says, hang on a second, I've also got a notice here saying that you haven't paid your bill since June. We need to come in and check your meter to see if there's a problem with it. Carrie leads him inside, rather unsure as to what's going on, only for the guy to say, hang on a second, you're currently bridged. That's completely illegal. You don't have a meter at all. And we sat there and said, that doesn't seem right. We had a guy come down a few months ago and put a new meter into the wall, and our brother-in-law who lives with us has been handling all of this. Every month he goes down and pays the bill. Or so we thought. Turns out that no, he hasn't been paying the bill at all. We've known he's not been paying his share of the rates and water since November last year, but we'd hoped that he was able to keep up with the $15 a month that we had to pay for electricity. You see, we're on a meter. This essentially means that you top it up ahead of time, you put so much electricity on it, and then as the month goes on, that meter ticks down. If you need to buy more, you pay more. Now, Zimbabwe has a really interesting way of doing this as well. In order to help people who use less electricity, your first few units of electricity are at a significantly lower rate to the higher ones. That means if you're spending $5 a month on electricity, you get a good portion. If you spend $10 a month, you get about half that again, and if you spend $15 a month, you get about half of the first half again, if that kind of makes sense. It's a sliding, probably logarithmic scale. $15 had been more than enough for us before the first meter had packed up, so we just assumed that him going down and paying $15 a month was going to keep us well ahead of time, and obviously the lights would go off if we ran out and we could just top up more. What we didn't realise is we had been bridged, and he hadn't been paying. So first of all, let's explain the bridge, because I think that's an important part here. Apparently, our previous meter had given up a time when Carrie and I were out at Masuna. So this guy had called in ZESA to look at the meter and repair it or replace it. They had taken the meter away for replacing it, and thus bridged us in the meantime, a temporary measure whilst they repaired our meter. Once they repaired the meter, they brought that back, only to find that no, the meter still wasn't working, so they bridged us again and said, give us a bit of time, we'll come back with a new meter. We assumed that this had been kept on top of, and perhaps wrongly on our behalf, with the assumption, you know what they say about assumptions. But it left us in a rather sticky situation at this point, because now today we're sitting there looking at a meter that's been bridged, with two official ZETDC gentlemen saying, that's completely illegal. We're going to have to remove that, we're going to have to turn you off, and we're going to have to issue a fine. And what a fine it was. First of all, there's the actual fine itself, being fined for not having an active meter. That was about $350. Then there's an administration charge of about $25, and then there is a approximate estimate based on maximum capacity usage for the months that haven't been paid. That's July, August, September, October, November. 5 months worth of bill unpaid at a 750 kilowatt hour limit. The total fine came to approximately $1,200. Now, naturally, Carrie and I are pretty upset by this. It's not Zessa's fault. It's the fact that we'd been lied to. We'd been told that that bill was getting paid. It wasn't. Not only had it not been paid, we have no actual evidence that the bridge had been legitimately put in, which means there's criminal charges being put on for tampering with government equipment. Oh boy. Fortunately, we just about managed to scrape the money together. We shoot down to ZETDC, and it takes us about 2 hours of going from office to office to office to figure out exactly what the bill 100% accurately is, then to go and confirm that we're paying the bill, then to go and pay the bill at 2 different areas because it's 2 different sets of fees, only to then have to go back to prove that we have actually paid the bill. Now that the fine and all that has been paid, we think, okay, they can come and they can switch us back on. Oh no, because we don't have a working meter, of course we need to get a working meter. So we then have to drive down to another shop and buy a new meter. That's $100. Then we need to go back to Zessa and say, look, we have paid for the meter because the shop that sells them doesn't actually keep them, they just take the money on behalf of Zessa. We go down to Zessa and hand in this piece of paper that says, we have bought a new meter, now we have to wait for them to come and install it. Now, it's also worth taking a break at this point in the story to point out that whilst we were driving from the shop where we've paid for the Zessa meter to the Zessa offices in downtown Bulawayo, the mother of all storms decides to hit us. I have never in my life seen rain like this. I was driving and with the wipers on full, I could barely see the car in front of me, not from just water hitting the windscreen, but just from the sheer curtain between the car in front and me. So we're all driving at about half the speed limit because no one can see. There are massive puddles flowing like rivers, literally up to the wheel arches of our 4x4 vehicle. It was insane. I have never in all of my life seen rain like this, and I was brought up in the UK, a country that is pretty well known for its rainfall. It was honestly a little bit scary, but we did eventually get to Zessa, we handed in the note, and then the storm seemed to abate as we were driving back. So it was about mid-afternoon by time we got back to the house. The storm has just ended, and we're wondering when Zessa are going to arrive to put this meter in. All of our devices are dead. Carrie and I have missed a full day of work at this point, and we're wondering if this is going to go over into a second day. That's a problem if, like me, it's all to do with my content. If I'm not creating content, I'm not getting paid. Same with Carrie as a graphics designer. If she doesn't finish a project, she doesn't get paid for it. So both of us really need that electricity back as soon as possible. Fortunately, it's about 5 minutes after we arrive at the house that the ZETDC van pulls up behind us, and the guys come in and fit the meter again. Only to find that no, the meter isn't working. It's definitely not working. So they bridge us again. But this time I've got full video evidence, we've taken names, we've got details, we've fully documented the entire thing just to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because wouldn't that be fun? So at least we have Zessa back now, right? No. Ultimately, that storm had knocked down several power lines around the city, including out by Turk Mine, which is one of the major inroads for the electricity into Bulawayo itself. Most of Zimbabwe's electricity is generated from 2 places. Wangi Power Plant, which is beyond disrepair at this point in time and needs some serious renovation work being done, and Kariba Dam. Now, if you're a follower of this channel, you'll already know that there are problems arising with Kariba Dam at the moment as well. Because the dam wall needed some rather severe reconstruction, they've had to let out pretty much half the river, so the dam is at very low flow and there are expected shortages to happen. Now, in Zimbabwe, when there are shortages, we have what's called load shedding. This is where basically different areas of the country, in some cases even different areas of the same town, are switched on and off to make sure that the entire grid doesn't collapse. These can be as long as 9 to 14 hours if you're lucky. Sometimes these last multiple days. It's miserable, to put politely. Our generator recently packed out. We do need to get that repaired and renovated in case this all starts happening again, and we would love to get solar, but solar is prohibitively expensive. Looking to get a setup that would just power our laptops, the Wi-Fi, a couple of fans and keep the deep freeze going is about $4,000. That's not easily doable. So yes, with the storm having taken down several power lines, the entirety of Bulawayo is currently without power until ZESA and ZETDC can repair those poles and get the power flowing again. We had been told this was going to be another day, so Carrie and I decided, you know what, it's too stressful at this point, let's go off to gym. And they have a generator, so while we're there they've got electricity, I plug my phone in and get it back up to about 70%. At this point in time I'm also messaging a few friends of mine to say, look, if anyone's got a generator running, is there a chance Carrie and I could swing by for an hour or so just to charge up our laptops and phones so that we can work tomorrow and we're not losing all of this income. Unfortunately, most of our friends replied and said, sorry, we're not actually running a generator ourselves at the moment because fuel is prohibitively expensive. Do you see how all of these situations circle together into a maelstrom of misery? The fact that we have a situation where we just don't have enough function to generate power, we have load shedding constantly, we have storms knocking down power lines, and yeah, to add on to all of that, fuel is ridiculously expensive if you want to try and run a generator. Fortunately, however, it didn't matter this time. About an hour after we got back from gym, Carrie's halfway through cooking dinner, the lights suddenly came back on, and we've learnt you do not cheer, you do not celebrate when the ZESA comes back. ZESA is a timid and shy creature, and it feels bad for having been gone for so long. So when it suddenly comes back, if you cheer and shout, the lights will often go back off. So we sit there very quietly, watching, waiting, making sure the ZESA's comfortable, and that it's settled back into the house, and then we all smile to ourselves. The power was back. I don't know what the guys had done. They had managed to get all of those poles up and running in the space of 3 or 4 hours, which honestly is nothing short of miraculous. We were just absolutely elated, charging our devices, plugging everything in, just drawing that sweet, sweet power back into everything so it's all fully charged. Now, ultimately, I'm well aware that talking like this does make me sound like a spoiled Westerner, and let's be completely honest, I am. I make no sense in hiding that. I grew up in a country where the power is pretty much a constant thing, where if the power goes off because a tree has downed a line or something, it's usually back within a day with massive apologies from the company and usually your bill paid for the month or whatever. So coming out here and seeing this, as I mentioned in my Challenges About Zimbabwe video, this is something that I do struggle with. It is something that I haven't fully learnt to adapt to yet. I rely on electricity. It's a real problem for me because that's my job, that's my ability to contact friends and family. I become really, really anxious, and that might also be a bit of my autism kicking in here as well, but it's a real problem for me when the power's off for an extended period of time. Give it an hour or two and I'm fine. But it's also worth mentioning that no power means no fans, and no fans in this heat, especially in the whole storm after atmosphere where everything is hot and humid. Yeah. But at the end of the story, the basis here is that now we have our power back. When I left the house earlier, everything's up and running. ZESA should be coming back today in order to fit our new meter. Fingers crossed. We've already paid for $15 a month. We will now be taking over the bills and just getting him to cough up the money every month. That said, I don't think he's going to be living with us all that much longer after all of this. But either way, it's a happy ending for us. And it does shine a light quite nicely, I think, on how electricity works out here, that most of us do have these prepay meters, that it's nice that it's done at cheaper if you're buying a small amount, and it gets more and more expensive the more that you buy, so that people like me who are using a lot of electricity do pay more for it. There are some other issues though, just to mention around this. We have an issue with electric generation here in Zimbabwe. Kariba has problems, Wangi has problems, and there's not much else going on to sort of add up to that. The Kariba power plant is getting a massive upgrade, courtesy of some funding from the European Union, funding the extension project on the South Bank there on the Zimbabwean side. But we also get a lot of our electricity imported from both South Africa and from Zambia, primarily through Eskom from South Africa, and there are some real big problems going on there right now. I won't go into this too heavily, but essentially Eskom has been going through some very difficult times in general. They're not generating as much as they should be, and a lot of that shortfall was being paid for by burning diesel. That was obviously very expensive. It's not great for the environment at the very least. And now it turns out that not only have the diesel drums completely dried up, there's no funding left in Eskom, there's no further diesel on order, and there's no repairing to the main infrastructure going on either. Now, this means that if Eskom are cutting down their power generation, then they're going to be exporting a lot less of it, right? Which means us here in Zimbabwe face a long summer of even more load shedding, because one of our major sources of electricity is not going to be supplying us anymore. And it does kind of make you think, if I'm being completely honest. We live in an African country. It does get fairly windy here in some places, so wind turbines are an excellent source of electrical generation. It's Africa. It is sunny. Even through our winter months, it is bright enough to run a solar panel really well. We've got friends and family with solar geysers, for example, to heat hot water. And even in the darkest, rainiest days in the middle of winter or in the rainy season or whenever, that water still comes out scaldingly hot every single time. I would love to see the Zimbabwe government push into solar and renewable energy more. We have this massive resource. Just invest in that. It creates jobs for the people who need to fit it, jobs for people who need to maintain that system. Those are jobs that don't exist before. And in a country with up to 97% unemployment, more jobs is always a good thing, right? And cleaner energy generation that doesn't rely on coal or diesel putting fumes in the air. Being able to use solar panels to generate electricity in a country like this would just make a lot of sense. It would help stabilize our electrical grid. And I would love to see that happen. And on that fairly positive note, I think I'll call the video here. This has been an interesting little discussion, I hope, for you all about how life in Zimbabwe works, about how electricity works, and how not to trust untrustworthy people. It's all come to a happy ending now, but I do hope that for the future we can get an even happier ending for Zimbabwe. If you've enjoyed this, please let me know. Hit like on it, subscribe if you haven't already, comment down below, and if you've got any questions, I do try to answer every comment that you guys put, so ask away, whether it's something relevant to this video or something you'd like to know for future. Again, I do apologise for the fact that I've got a microphone sitting here in camera. We will have the setup back up to a proper running setup next time. I promise. Maybe. Anyway, folks, I'm Captain Benzie, the Bulawayo Buccaneer. Thank you ever so much for watching. Thank you for all of your support on this video and every one other. Happy sailing, and see you all next time. Really is a beautiful day today.